Wind through pines. The old monk awoke to pre-dawn stillness. Shunyo rose slowly from his thin straw mat and dressed in silence. He lit a single candle, letting its flickering light guide him through familiar motions, washing his face, putting on his robes, preparing tea. With first light beaming through the shutters, Shunyo took up his wooden staff and stepped outside. Mist blanketed the garden like white silk. Moisture beaded on stone and leaves. The air held a delicate chill. Shunyo stood motionless, receiving sensory impressions. Scents of the night-blooming jasmine faded as songbirds tentatively tested their voices. The sky awoke into gradual radiance. Bearing witness in stillness centered the monk's mind for the day's journey. With purposeful steps Shunyo walked the winding path to where forest took over from garden. Here he bowed deeply before entering the trees. To walk mindfully under their ancient canopy was itself a moving meditation. Shunyo followed the trail slowly, each footfall an intention. Lichen-speckled boulders and knots of gnarled roots lined the way, radiating patient wisdom. At a certain twist in the path, marked by a lightning-split pine, Shunyo turned off and descended a slope blanketed in emerald moss. Ferns unfurled across the forest floor, tiny resurrections. Filtered sunlight danced ahead like a beckoning spirit. The air grew richer and darker as Shunyo entered the secluded heartwood. Deep within this sanctuary stood a massive cedar, its trunk wider than a man could encircle with arms outstretched. Shunyo had discovered the tree decades ago while wandering the nearby mountains. Moved by its primordial magnificence, he had returned here ritualistically to sit in meditation at its base. He could feel antiquity flowing up from the cedar's roots into his own mortal frame. Settling onto a bare patch of earth, Shunyo leaned into the ridged bark and closed his eyes. Lichen crumbled against his shoulder, releasing musty aromas. The muted forest ambience wrapped around the monk's awareness, birds calling, leaves quivering, branches creaking. His measured breath aligned rhythmically, inhaling the wisdom of trees. Shunyo sank into a tranquil meditative state, everything within him coming to rest. No effort was required. The mighty cedar seemed to draw out his stillness like sap from a wellspring. Time ebbed and flowed unmeasured. Silence took on texture and flavor. In such moments the forest revealed its hidden language, requiring no words. Reluctantly Shunyo opened his eyes again, returning to ordinary perception. He rose creakily, bowing in thanks to the ancient cedar. Then the monk climbed back up the mossy slope to rejoin the main trail. Ferns brushed his legs in tender farewell. Emerging from the trees, Shunyo felt refreshed and realigned. The day's journey could proceed on course. Meandering homeward, Shunyo detoured from the trail to visit the tranquil lily pond that had served as his refuge for decades. Koi flashed beneath lily pads like passing smiles. The monk's steps slowed further, allowing stillness to ripple outward. A heron stood statue-like at water's edge, an embodied teaching on patience. Shunyo drank it in, letting calm soak to his very bones. Upon returning to his hermitage, Shunyo prepared a simple meal of millet and steamed vegetables from the garden. Mindfully he consumed each bite, tasting colors and aromas. Light faded to indigo through the open window as Shunyo drank ginger tea. Everything he needed was right here. When night fully claimed the garden, Shunyo took up brush and inkstone to capture the day's impressions in calligraphy. Bold strokes summoned cedar strength, wispy trails the trailing mist. Making a record was Shunyo's ritual across years uncounted, a timeline of insight. His shelves now overflowed with scrolls covered edge to edge in black characters. At last Shunyo set his brush aside, snuffed the lantern, and unrolled his sleeping mat. Lying in darkness, he listened to the muted roar of a distant waterfall echoing through the forest. It called him to let thoughts flow onward without clinging. Shunyo visualized moonlight bathing the ancient cedar in its glow as he spiraled into dreamless rest. At sunrise Shunyo woke to birdsong and stillness once more. Another day waited to unfold, brimming with small wonders. The monk rose calmly to greet it. Wooden staff in hand, he followed the winding trail into forest shadow, each step itself a meditation. Moss welcomed him back as wind sang through the pines. This tale was inspired by the quiet peace and wisdom emanating from nature, especially ancient forests. The monk's daily ritual walk grounds him in the present while gradually revealing nature's deeper teachings. Trees like the mighty cedar represent centered stillness and deep-rooted insight. By learning nature's language, we tune ourselves to life's essential rhythms and see more clearly. Each sensory impression calls us back to this singular moment.